Hey, it's Sol with another video, and I'm back to talk about another lore-related topic that has been pretty hot lately. Ever since the whole dealie with Sylvanas and the Three Sisters, the idea of death has been a very resounding and a very strong topic that's been talked about around the Warcraft community. Especially in this most recent World of Warcraft expansion, the Battle for Azeroth, death or undeath has been a prevalent theme. Most recently, we've been hearing from Bwonsamdi, the Loa of Death. By the way, some story spoiler alerts, folks, and this whole video is going to be all about speculation and theory and some tinfoiliness. So, strap in, let's just have fun. Anyway, back to Bwonsamdi. There was a scenario where we, the champion of Azeroth, were given the task to take the ashes of Vol'jin to a certain location in Zandalar. We were stopped by Bwonsamdi and then talked into, well, more like, very strongly persuaded to instead take this urn of ashes over to the necropolis over in Nazmir. Once we do so and we present this urn, Bwonsamdi's like, yes, now I'm going to do voodoo stuff to Vol'jin's soul. Unfortunately, and to the Loa of Death's surprise and dismay, well, the spirit's not in there, and Bwonsamdi finds himself to be in pretty big trouble. He refers to someone that he calls his boss, and getting in trouble, and that this wasn't the first time that it's happened. And today I want to put a little bit of focus as to who is this boss of Bwonsamdi? Who is this boss of death, apparently? And to get to this theory of mine, and I just call it a theory, I don't think I'm absolutely correct, but this is something that's worth thinking about, we need to go as far as the origins of necromancy and death itself in the Warcraft universe. But first, let me address and give a counterpoint to one of the more popular theories that's going on out there, that the idea of death or undeath is like the enemy of both the void and the light, that somehow undeath is going to be this new endgame that we, the champions of Azeroth, are going to encounter sometime in this expansion or the next. And I think it's a very interesting theory. It could be true, but in my opinion and interpretation, I don't think that's entirely accurate. So let's get right into it. Now, based on the Chronicle, all of creation, the whole great dark beyond, started with the light and the void. From a writing standpoint, already we're getting into that trope of balance. You can't have light without darkness, you can't have shadow without the light, that sort of thing. Somewhere on screen here, I'm going to put up a picture, and this is a picture of, kind of the cosmic power set in the Warcraft universe. On the top and bottom, you have the light and the void, where, at the very beginning of Warcraft's universe, the intersection or the conflict of light and void caused an eruption or an explosion, a big bang, so to speak. And that big bang, the swirl of energy and mass, is what created the Great Dark Beyond. Based on that, I postulate that the other cosmic powers in the universe, such as life, death / necromancy, the arcane, and the fell, all of those things we would consider as byproducts of the light and void coming together. Heck, I can go as far as saying that we, as in the champions of Azeroth, are all the children of shadow and light. Because we're working with the facts that the light and void came together and made this whole explosion, and that beforehand there was no life, death, fell, and arcane, we've got to at least assume that over time that these cosmic powers took shape and all created this relatively delicate balance across the entire Great Dark Beyond. However, this is Warcraft, and whether it's orcs versus humans or whatnot, even at a cosmic level, these forces are battling for dominance. We already know that forces of the void and the light are pretty much at each other's throats, trying to dominate and control in order to achieve whatever the heck endgame that they're trying to get to. But that's not to say that the other great cosmic powers of the universe are also up to the same thing. The Titan Pantheon assign themselves to commit to the ordering of the universe, and if left unchecked, maybe they would order the entire universe. On the opposite end, the demons, and I guess later on the Burning Legion, who ironically is led by one of the Titans, opts to destroy everything and return all of it to nothingness. This one might be a little bit of a stretch, but according to Chronicles Volume 2, on ancient Draenor, the element of spirit was so abundant that life itself was threatening the planet, leading the Titan Agrimar to take some action in order to rebalance things. And on the other side of that was the pull of death. Anything and everything under its thrall was threatened to be pulled into its sway. Of course, keep in mind that not everything easily submits to death either. Titans and elements and other immortal beings are, for the most part, not really touched by death. At least not in the way that you and I think. The point I'm trying to make is that it's not just death, but it's all the cosmic powers of the Great Dark Beyond that could be considered the enemy of the light and the void. But at the same time, it's not, because everything comes from the light and the void, and there is this harmony, this balance to keep together anyway. If you think about Warcraft in a cosmic timeline, think of it as the forces of the Arcane, the Titan Pantheon, as well as the forces of the Fel, like the Burning Legion and many of the demons. Think of them as down for the count for right now. They're beaten back, they're pushed back, they've had their broken shore, okay? And at the moment, the forces of death and necromancy are about to take center stage. The forces of light and the void are ever present, and meanwhile, the mortals of Azeroth are just stuck in the middle. But when it comes to who represents death and undeath in the Warcraft universe, well, there isn't really a great representative. I mean, we have Bwonsamdi, he's a Loa, he's a wild god of sorts, but his scope doesn't cover very much. He's powerful, but he only really has sway over troll spirits. Helya, who may return either in this or a future expansion, she has her own domain, she even has her own undead army with the Cavaldir. However, her origins aren't from death, she used to be a Titan-forged keeper. She did what she did under the sway and the power of Odyn, who is a Titan Watcher. He in fact is the one who created the Valkyr, the ghostly maidens who ferry the spirits of the dead, who wander about the Shadowlands, and otherwise, well, do whatever Odyn says. The Lich King is arguably extremely powerful in his right, commanding countless, innumerable number of undead. His origins, though, come from the Dreadlords, agents of the Burning Legion and otherwise the Fel, who crafted the armor that the Lich King resides in. Meanwhile, Sylvanas, while she is a very visible player, she's kind of small time when it comes to the idea of being some undead master or master of death. She's just borrowing or stealing whatever power she can get to in order to forward her own agenda. So while she's no less ambitious than anyone else, she's working at, again, a very small scale, just like everybody else. And there are more who claim this mastery of death. I mean, there's Yogg-Saron, who calls himself the god of death. Argus is referred to as the Titan of death, whatever that's supposed to mean. And since we've recently seen him, let's just throw in N'Zoth too. He's a something of death. Sure, why not? The point is that there are a lot of players and maybe even pretenders, and not a singular master of death. As of yet, we haven't quite seen someone to reveal themselves as a boss, but for all we know, there may be some sort of underground war between these forces of necromancy, and they're all vying for dominance. Maybe somebody just whooped Bwonsamdi's ass, and all of a sudden now they're his boss. Recall that in an early questline, Bwonsamdi gives up King Rastakan's spirit to Razan, the Loa of Kings. Maybe it was because Bwonsamdi knew that he was going to see him shortly. Maybe it's because Razan is that much more powerful than he is and has sway. But with the little information that we have, there is one thing that we can assume about at least some of these players, and it's the fact that they tend to work around the land of the dead, the Shadowlands. According to the Chronicle, the Shadowlands is what you would consider the default place where dead things go. I find it a little bit curious that Odyn and Helya, they pull spirits not from the Shadowlands, but from the land of the living as soon as they die. And once they do that, they pull them up into their own realm for their own use. The Lich King, Sylvanas, the Valkyr under their sway, and other necromancers, they do all sorts of weird things with recently dead stuff. Meanwhile, Bwonsamdi deals and bargains with other folks who have command over the manipulation of souls. In light of all of this, though, just who is powerful enough for Bwonsamdi to call his boss? He or she needs to be, at the very least, knowledgeable enough about spirits and souls for Bwonsamdi to have that sort of interaction with. After all, it's not every day that you find a Loa of Death to be really upset over losing a spirit, perhaps for the second time, and to be worried that someone's going to be mad. It also depends on when Bwonsamdi might have lost a spirit previously. If it was a very long time ago, then this person, he or she, would also need to be extremely old, at least as old as Bwonsamdi, if not older. So, let's get to it. Following the Blizzard playbook of, hey, it's probably the most obvious answer, here's my guess. Maybe the identity of Bwonsamdi's boss isn't a matter of who, but what. There is only one master of death, one who commands innumerable souls, and also happens to be just about as old as the Great Dark Beyond itself, and that is the Shadowlands itself. Wow. I never get hyped up about my own bombshells and reveals, sorry. But that's what I'm getting at. Think of the Shadowlands not as just a realm where the dead go. Think of it as having its own will. Think of the Shadowlands as more or less a force of nature, not something that straight up walks and talks to you and has a plan to take over the universe, but it's simply a force of nature that has, like I said, a will. But I think this is an idea or a theory that is both cool and kind of plausible. Maybe we can get to some wild theories about what the Shadowlands itself thinks about necromancy and undeath. Remember Arthas' last words before he's defeated as the Lich King, that all he sees is darkness. Sometime after, when Sylvanas jumps off of Icecrown's citadel, she finds herself also in this absolute darkness. Maybe the Shadowlands is a place where if you've committed, really heinous acts against the dead, you're gonna get punished by being returned into this nothingness. And meanwhile, us players, us champions of Azeroth, when we die, we happen to kind of see or able to feel and touch things within the Shadowlands, even travel back and forth without too much trouble. So I'm going to stop there because I'll get into even more crazy outlandish theories, and I just want to leave it to you folks at home and on the toilet. Like, what do you think of this theory? Like, what if Bwonsamdi's boss is the very nature of death itself that has its own will? I think that's pretty heavy on his part, and I can see why Sylvanas is scared of death. Or is this theory total BS? But if you think so, that is okay. We're just here to have fun with some speculation and some free thoughts. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to support the channel, and I can give you more of this and all things Warcraft. I'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.